Hello and welcome back to the Film Club, the club where we talk about films that we've been recently watching, viewing and enjoying. Let me know what you've been recently watching and enjoying, and if you've seen what I'm about to talk about, let me know in the comments what you thought about it. I hate doing this because it's not actually very often that I massively dislike a film. A lot of the films I go and see, I can see the good in, I can see the reasoning for it, and I love Marvel. I've been the biggest Marvel fan for the longest time. I've grown up with it. I've absolutely adored it. Since Iron Man 1 came out, I have watched every single film, and moving into the TV shows, for better or for worse, I have stuck by Marvel. And even when the reviews for other films, like Eternals got a terrible review, I actually quite like Eternals. I think it's quite a good film. The Marvels, it's not necessarily the best, but it's just a fun, light-hearted film. Things like Thor Ragnarok, like that. I actually didn't mind Thor Ragnarok. I thought it was just a fun little space adventure. But Captain America Brave New World is possibly the first time that I genuinely just did not like a single part of the film. And it saddens me to say this because I feel sorry for people like Anthony Mackie, who clearly cares about the character of Captain America, and it was just such a mess of a film. And I'll break down why I think so, and it's quite a weird one because I feel like the internet can't make their minds up, which is not a bad thing, don't get me wrong. Some people say it's a decent movie, it's okay, it's nothing groundbreaking, but it's a good superhero movie. Other people are in my boat who just think it is absolutely horrendous. It's the first time ever in my life where I could have got up and walked out of the cinema. Like, genuinely, I have never wanted to. I was so bored. I was so bored and annoyed and frustrated with how this film turned out for a number of reasons. The first and worst one for me being the dialogue. The dialogue and the writing of this were the fundamental wrong things about this film. Like, the dialogue is something that I could be convinced was AI. Like, every single line felt like just the most bland, basic way of saying something or pointing something out. There was no emotion behind any line delivered. There was no teasing. It was just, here's this thing, here's what I want to say. The most perfect example of this is Harrison Ford's character throughout the film mentions to us like 2 or 3 times, oh, I love walking with my daughter through the cherry blossoms. And it doesn't feel natural, it doesn't feel like a heartfelt statement, it just feels like something forced to set up for later on when he needs to calm down because he thinks about his daughter in the cherry blossoms. It's the same thing as him just constantly throughout the film having to remind us, but I want to prove to everyone I've changed, I want to know that I've changed, and the only thing at the end is Anthony Mackie, or Captain America, saying to him, oh, prove to everyone you've changed. And then he's like, okay, I'll no longer be Red Hulk. And it's just, it annoys me thinking about it now. The best comparison to a poor piece of writing in comparison to other Marvel films I can think of is when the Falcon gets hit out of the sky. So when they're flying around the celestial being, or celestial island, I think they call it, the Falcon guy, I don't actually know his name, I can't remember, gets shot out of the sky and he falls into the ocean, and that should have been like a hard-hitting moment, similar to when Warhammer gets shot out of the sky in Civil War. It's a pause and break for Tony where he has regret and fear for the life of his friend, and he just instantly drops everything and goes to see him. In this film, however, he gets shot out of the sky. Captain America has a split second where he goes, he's been shot out of the sky, I'm gonna go help him. And then it flicks to another shot of someone going on the earpiece going, no, stick to the mission. Next shot, no reaction at all. It's just him carrying on with the mission. There's no frustration, there's no emotion shown, there's no sort of, oh, but I need to go save him, he's my friend. There's none of that. It's just straight back to the action. And it just makes it such a useless plot point that means absolutely nothing. And that brings me to my other point, which is that this whole story and whole plot means very little. Like, anything anybody says and does, I've seen it a lot said online, but this almost was a direct sequel to Incredible Hulk, and they just shoehorned Captain America into it. And you could tell throughout the film they're really, really trying to have that same sort of espionage feel that Civil War did, but it just falls so flat and feels so forced. And there's also just this film, the best comparison I can give is this film feels like a 2010 Transformers film. I can't remember which one it is, but it's the one where they fight at the pyramids at the end. I can't remember which Transformers film it is, but it's one of them where there's just like people just spewing shit everywhere, and it leaves you thinking like, I don't actually care about what's happening. The other thing that is the most frustrating for me is that the whole film is shown within the trailer. You can tell that they had nothing, absolutely nothing involving Captain America to sell this film on. So they had to sell it with Red Hulk. And that would be fine and cool if we got more of Red Hulk, if there was something deeper and more interesting other than the fact that they just have one fight scene at the end of the film, which we saw all of in the trailer. Like, the coolest moments we saw in the trailer. All of the fight scenes are quite bland. They're not interesting. Like, Captain America running through the, I can't remember what it is, but the terrorist group at the beginning, like, and it just didn't excite me. It didn't fill me with anything, for the pure reason as well of how it was filmed. The amount of cuts in this is outrageous. You can barely tell what's going on because it's just going like this, just like shot after shot after shot, and it's like, slow it down, let us see what's going on, choreograph it a bit better, block it a bit better, and we might actually enjoy the film. Instead of just, it felt like I was watching a film from 2007, 8 or 9. That is what it felt like. It was so lackluster. And with the fight scenes, there was one cool move where it did the slow motion, where it was his falcon wing slicing through something, which was awesome. And then they reused it 3 times in the film. And at that point, it just dilutes it to a point where you're like, okay, he's just doing the same move that he's done already in the film. I don't really care now. It annoys me how poorly done this is, because I feel bad for the people who worked on it. I might get hate for this next point. Harrison Ford has had his day. Like, if that's not abundantly clear to Disney, then I don't know what is. After Indiana Jones, the new one, flopped so hard, and this, he is so wooden in this. There is no emotion. It feels, you can tell that he's just like reading off a script. He's got no attachment to the characters. It's partly down to the writing of it as well, but it's also his incredibly wooden acting that helps nothing. The other thing that this film suffers with as well is I feel like this is the first ever time where you struggle to watch this film without having watched other stuff. Like, Marvel has always been very decent to audiences in knowing that not everybody watches everything. Like, I took my girlfriend, she's not watched Captain America and the Winter Soldier, the TV show. She's probably watched Incredible Hulk, but it was probably absolutely years ago. I've not watched Incredible Hulk for years, so when they're like giving references to it, it means little to nothing, and it's also for other people very confusing. Like, Isaiah Bradley's character is interesting and cool, but without the show, there's little to no emotional weight behind any of it with him going to prison, so that means nothing to probably half of the audience. The way it was filmed was boring, the CGI was horrendous, especially in the post-credit scene, which, by the way, I was that like bored and fed up with this film, I didn't even wait in the cinema. I literally just watched it on TikTok afterwards, or Twitter or something, and the CGI in that, you can tell it's a reshoot because Anthony Mackie is quite clearly in a room that looks like a cartoon. Like, it is so flat and unbearable. There's so much wrong with this film, but I hope it's because of the writer's strike, and I hope it's because we're in this post-Endgame slump where they didn't really know what to do. They were just throwing shit at the wall, and I feel like now we've got this one out the way, I really hope that Marvel picks up its tracks again. Fantastic Four looks good. Thunderbolts looks good, and everything after that, Daredevil looks good. Everything after that has promise and it's interesting. So I really hope that this is the last of the sort of dead weight films, because I'm sick of going, this film's incredible, this film's terrible, this film's incredible, this film's terrible, because that's what it's been for the last few years with Marvel. They have such great hits, but then also so many misses. I really hope that Anthony Mackie gets a chance to actually shine. It's nothing to do with him, but I feel like he doesn't have the sort of bravado, calmness that Steve Rogers had to the Captain America character. That I can't imagine him in sort of a lead role with the Avengers, for example. I can't imagine him leading the Avengers in a way that Steve Rogers could. If it was done right, then maybe I'd be proven wrong, but so far, the 2 projects that he's been Captain America in have been my literal 2 least favourite that Disney's ever come out with. So we'll just have to see. But anyway, let me know, what did you think of Captain America Brave New World if you have seen it? And I will see you next time on The Film Club.